Donald the Double Agent? Now, if you've been following the news, obviously you will be aware that the Russiagate investigation is still a major topic, also known as the Russia thing. So then, of course, you have the firing of FBI Chief Comey and a lot of media reports about that. And, of course, the mainstream media and most of the so-called alternative media, they don't really give you an accurate picture. They don't give you the real thing, but rather they give you something that will serve the respective media organization. So, for example, the mainstream media hates Trump simply because he hates them and he doesn't favor them like other presidents have done. And for that reason and some other reasons, of course, mainstream media wants to bring Trump down. They just want another president. I mean, the mainstream media would be perfectly happy with the exact same cabinet that Trump has put together, the cabinet of insiders. They just want somebody else than Trump at the seeming alleged top, but of course Trump doesn't really decide anything. And so that's why mainstream media is telling you that Trump is most likely, they're telling you Trump is most likely a Russian agent. Look at all these connections. Look at the investigation. And also the firing of Comey. They say Trump fired Comey because Comey was onto him and Trump got really scared and panicky, and that's why he got rid of the lead investigator here, Mr. Comey. And the so-called alternative media, a lot of them have jumped on the Trump train for very sleazy reasons, just money and attention. They just wanted the hype. Some of them apparently never expected Trump to win. They just wanted to gain the attention and gain the popularity by promoting Trump during the campaign. They never expected him to win. They thought this was going to be an easy Hillary win. And then it's 4 years of attacking Hillary, which is very easy to do. Of course, Hillary needs to be attacked, especially if she's president. But it's just a very simple thing to do. It's just very, very easy for alternative media to do that. But then Trump won and made everything really, really complicated. So places like InfoWars and others, they have, they got a lot riding on this whole Trump situation. So they're really careful. They still support Trump or pretend to support Trump, but they pretend there's this fight between Trump and the neocons and all that. And of course, there's fights in the White House and there's fights in the Trump camp, but it's just because they're people. We saw the same kind of fighting in the Hillary camp. There's a new book out that describes how chaotic Hillary's campaign was and how nobody trusted each other and everybody hated each other, and this was really, really messy. But still, Hillary is an evil witch of the establishment. So just because there's tensions and firings and all that kind of stuff in the Trump camp doesn't mean Trump is a good guy. And so about this Russia thing and this Russiagate investigation, obviously alternative media, places like so-called alternative media, places like InfoWars, they're telling their audience, no, there's nothing to it. Trump cannot possibly be a Russian agent. This is all just made up crap by the Democrats or by the establishment, the deep state. They just want to remove Trump, even though Trump has filled his administration with insiders. But so both sides, mainstream media and the so-called alternative media, they're not giving you an accurate picture. They're not telling you what's really going on. They're just doing some self-serving reporting. So obviously, mainstream media leave the door open. Trump might be innocent, but alternative media doesn't even consider that Trump might be guilty, might be entangled with the Russians, might have been recruited by the Russians, and so on. But that's not even the biggest issue I have with the reporting out there. The biggest issue is this: there's another option. There's another likely possibility within the realm of reality, and that option is that Donald Trump is a Western agent and has been an asset, intelligence asset, a Western asset for a while. You see, usually people who are intelligence assets become head of state, and preferably second-generation intelligence assets become heads of state. We've seen this time and time again. So Trump is very fishy. Trump has always been a very fishy guy. His dad was always a very fishy, well-connected guy. It would have made perfect CIA agents or other intelligence assets, maybe even skull and bones type level assets. International businessmen who go to all these places and meet all these foreign people and move money around the world and do buildings, important buildings for various customers and that sort of thing. So it lends itself to intelligence work, right? And so this option, Trump, the Western agent, also includes a kind of a sub-option, a sub-scenario, sub-possibility, namely Trump is a double agent, meaning he's primarily a Western agent, but he's fooling the Russians. He has been fooling the Russians, pretending that he just got himself entangled with the Russians and giving the Russians some leverage over him as part of his mission. You know, he was built up as an asset, a Western asset, and they waited for the Russians to come, and he let himself get recruited by the Russians, or at least got himself entangled with the Russians on purpose, right? So this is a realistic scenario. This is one of the scenarios we have to be looking at. And so why isn't mainstream media talking about it? Because they don't really tell you anything important about the intelligence world, especially not the basic tactics and strategies. And of course, alternative media, they're usually incompetent. They don't really know anything because they don't read any books. Or they read bad books, or they just copy whatever the Russians are doing. So nobody's telling you about this pretty obvious, realistic scenario. I'm not saying it's proven that Trump is a Western agent or he's a Western double agent, but it's something we need to really, really seriously look at. And there's a new documentary out. Or documentary series out. It's a multi-part series. It's called The Dubious Friends of Donald Trump. Part 1, The Russians. Part 2, The King of Diamonds. You know, very, very weird bedfellows of Trump. And so if you watch something like this, or if you read the recent transcript of the, what was it? Was it the Comey questioning or some important, I forgot what it was exactly. Important questioning in the US government about the ongoing Trump investigation, the Russiagate investigation. And in this public and unclassified setting, they couldn't answer a lot of questions, but even stuff they could tell you was very, very scary. And now you have this documentary, The Dubious Friends of Donald Trump, Part 1, The Russians. So if you watch that, you get to see that there's obviously smoke. There's a lot of smoke. So somewhere there has to be a fire. There has to be some fire somewhere. So they're giving you kind of the stuff that's public about Felix Sater, former business associate of Trump. And Mr. Sater, according to Wikipedia at least, and some reports, Felix Sater at some point was lured into collaboration with the CIA because he got into trouble for some investments he did, and then there was a court case, a very scary one, and apparently he was recruited by the CIA, and they promised him he was going to be let off the hook easily if he cooperates. And so that's kind of the shady world of intelligence we're dealing here. So yes, obviously Trump, I mean, that we can say for sure, Trump has had some very, very strange bedfellows, very weird connections, and the more that comes out, the scarier it sounds. So maybe he was just being very opportunistic, but covered his behind, and you will never actually get to convict Trump of anything. That's a strong possibility. Maybe Trump pushed it too far, or maybe Trump got entangled himself into this and he didn't know a way out, and maybe the Russians have some stuff against him. Maybe that's going to come out. Then Trump has to resign. Nothing really changes in the Republican Party or in the general political system. Of course, it's going to be a huge scandal. If stuff like that comes out, I mean, the Russians would have been taking a very, very huge risk. If that ever comes out, the Russians look really, really evil in this, and this is almost like a declaration of war. Of course, the intelligence agencies in the West, they know about a lot of Russian operations here, and they assume the Russians are playing dirty, just as Western intelligence agencies play dirty. But there's certain limits, and of course, if the Russians are somewhat running the U.S. president as an asset, that will be a cluster, you know what, of epic proportions. Very interesting to see if it's going to play out like that. But yeah, that's a possibility, of course, that might come out, but it doesn't change the political power structure in the US. You know, it's not like Trump is an actual hero of the American people. He's never been. And this was all just propaganda. You know, InfoWars and others, they never presented any credible evidence that Trump was going to save America or really, really try. It's just a bunch of hype, claims, fantasies, and supposed sources, high-level sources who said that Trump was going to save America. But, of course, these sources might be fooled themselves, or they don't know what they're talking about, or they might be actively spreading disinformation. And then, well, if you watch all this, if you watch this new documentary, The Dubious Friends of Donald Trump, I mean, a couple of years ago, or maybe just 1.5, 2 years ago, you would have imagined that such a documentary would be posted on Infowars.com and similar places, but it's not. They don't post stuff like this. They keep riding the Trump train with one leg, the other leg ready to jump off to save their own butts and save their own careers. But of course, they're going to see stuff like that. You know, people in the Infowars office and other places, other bloggers, YouTubers, whatever, radio people, they're going to watch stuff like this in their offices. They're going to watch it, and they're going to try to hedge their own risk and think, okay, what are we going to do if stuff really comes out? How are we going to play this to our audience? How are we going to fool our audience? How do we keep our audience from running away? That sort of thing. So that's all that's going on right now. I'm pretty sure of that. So yeah, we need to be on top of this, and I just recommend to everybody that they, for example, read our website, follow our YouTube channel. I've been critical of Trump from the very beginning. I've done a proper assessment. I've gotten a huge stack of actual literature, not just news articles, especially no Russian news articles. I just got a bunch of literature and did a lot of work. Nothing too fancy, just solid work. And the result was Trump is not to be trusted. You know, there's no good reason to trust Donald Trump. And so, yeah, it's not just all made up, the Russiagate thing. It's not just a Democratic ploy. There's a lot of thick smoke, and it looks very, very scary. But then nobody's telling you about the Trump Western agent scenario or Trump Western double agent scenario. That he's been working as a Western asset for a long time. I mean, at some point he was out of money. He was running out of credit because he wasn't paying back his debts. He was using creative bankruptcy maneuvers. And so nobody wanted to give him money anymore except Deutsche Bank, who has been kind of involved in some weird things involving Russians. So that's very interesting there. And one of Trump's friends, one of the big investors, I think that's also in his administration right now. I'd have to double check that. One of Trump's big investor friends is also involved sort of with the Russians and the Deutsche Bank in Cyprus. And there's a lot of interesting Russians that have money in that bank. So that kind of stuff might mean that Trump was a sleazy opportunist who took any kind of money. It might mean that Trump is entangled too much with the Russians or even recruited by the Russians. But it also might mean that Trump was part of an elaborate scheme to do basic intelligence work. I mean, what we're learning from this new documentary and some of the investigation that has been leaking, what we learned from this is that Trump has been possibly doing some money laundering thing. I mean, not necessarily criminal money laundering on his end. I mean, if some Russian brings money to the US and buys, property from Trump is doing nothing illegal if he covers his own butt. because he doesn't have to check every single cent. He doesn't have to check where every single cent comes from that an investor from Russia brings to the table. So Trump might be in the clean. He might have been perfectly legal with this stuff. But it's just interesting that you have allegations or suspicions of money laundering. Russian money being brought to the U.S. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the Russians taking over the Trump administration. It might just as well mean that Western intelligence is moving into the Russian sphere of power. Laundering Russian money and luring Russian oligarchs into the West, that sounds like pretty solid standard intelligence work to me. Because a lot of Russian oligarchs want to defect to the West. They want to just leave Russia because Russia is boring and you're not safe in Russia even if you're a rich guy. They want to go to the West and not just bring their money, but bring the secrets. And so, yeah, that's a very interesting situation. You see, it's a pull strategy, not a push strategy. It's useless to send standard CIA agents to Russia disguised as business people, Oh, here is Mr. Smith, who is an import-export businessman and wears these cool sunglasses. I mean, the Russians would see through that in a minute, but it would probably make sense for the CIA and other Western intelligence groups to recruit people, Western businessmen who are in financial trouble, help them with money, and then build them up as potential partners for Russians and wait till the Russian agents are coming. So wait till the Russians come. So you can entangle those Russians, deceive them, feed them disinformation. Successfully. The Trump camp successfully fed the Russians disinformation. That's pretty much clear. The disinformation of, we're going to leave Syria alone, we're not going to get entangled here, and we're going to, stop or lower the sanctions, we're going to do what the Russians want, and none of that really happened after Trump won the presidency. So one goal is to give disinformation to the Russians, and the other goal is to simply lure in Russians, because even if when you're encountering a Russian agent or a Russian businessman who's also an agent, who's also mafia, you can recruit them. You can just pull them in, bring them over to the West and get them to defect. They're going to keep a lot of their money. They're going to be rich. They're going to be protected. And Russia has been tightening lately the restrictions of travel. If you're working in government in Russia, you can't really travel to foreign countries, except for a small number of certain countries. You can have a vacation on Crimea, which is under control by Moscow, but you can't just go anywhere. And at some point in the near future, we might see a rollback back to Soviet-era laws where you just simply cannot leave the Eastern Bloc, where the borders are shut and you can't just get out. Unless, of course, you're allowed to go to the West because you're an agent or a businessman, but then, of course, the CIA can recruit those people. So, folks out there should just follow our channel, follow our website, eng.recenter.com. You can find the link below. And they should also just get some good books about intelligence agencies and how they run and how they work, and different books from different whistleblowers from different intelligence groups, and that helps a lot. And it's not good enough to just surf on InfoWars and hit those sites, because they're not really telling you a bigger picture. They're just telling you what you want to hear. And isn't it interesting that a sleazebag like Roger Stone over at InfoWars, that his sources always seem to tell him what serves Roger's agenda? After the Comey firing, the spin was, yeah, that's a good thing that Trump fired Comey, because Comey was in with the conspirators who want to bring down Trump with this Russiagate thing, and so Trump is now purging the bad guys from his administration. No, Trump is firing a few people here and there, but this is the same chaos you have in every administration, kind of a different level of chaos, but still, it's doesn't mean Trump is a good guy. Trump is firing a few people, replacing a few people who have failed him, but that doesn't mean Trump is purging the insiders from his entire administration. There's so many insiders, I can't even tell you all about them in 5 hours of broadcasting. And places like InfoWars, they never seem to really bitch and moan a lot about all these terrible, terrible people in Trump's administration. They just keep quiet about that, or they spin it and say Rex Tillerson is a good guy. You know, that's what InfoWars used to say. Now they're not saying that anymore, because Tillerson is now pretty much a hardliner on the Russians. And so, yeah, that's very interesting to see that whatever Roger Stone says or InfoWars say, based on their sources, their high-placed sources, meaning this crazy bunch of people running around in the White House and surrounding areas, their sources tell them something that completely fits the narrative of InfoWars and Roger Stone. Gee, what a surprise, you know. They always tell you a spin that makes InfoWars and Roger Stone sound good. But it's questionable how long this charade is going to work. Apparently, InfoWars and others have decided they're just going to ride out the next 3.5 years. You know, they're just going to ride it out, keep spinning stuff, and secretly hope that a Democrat is next in line to win, or a Bush or some Bush president is going to win next. So InfoWars can go back to what they always done and just give you a primitive view on things. I mean, we've learned from a BuzzFeed, I mean, of course I'm not a fan of BuzzFeed, but it was an interesting BuzzFeed story recently about former InfoWars employees, a lot of them going on record without naming their names, alleging that Alex Jones wanted or may have wanted Obama to win a second term because InfoWars was making a lot of money with attacking Obama, and of course it was right to attack Obama, and it was a good thing to make documentaries like the Obama deception, but it became too much of just a business thing for InfoWars. You know, I mean, when you reach a point where you wish for another Obama administration, just so you can continue to make more money, that's pretty sleazy. And supposedly, according to this BuzzFeed story, former employees of InfoWars alleged that Alex Jones didn't expect Trump to win. He didn't want Trump to win because that complicated everything. And he expected Hillary to win so he can make a lot of money for the next 4 years by attacking Hillary, so he can have more money to blow on his lawyers and his parents and expensive houses and that sort of thing. So yeah, just be smart out there, you know, be smart, educate yourself. If you out there read just a few books per month, if you achieve to read a few good books per month, you'll be a lot smarter than the InfoWars guys out there and many others out there. Then you can judge these things much better. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, comment down below, like us, and recommend us, share our stuff, and visit our website, eng.recenter.com.